The first thing I saw when I came home from deployment was a plastic dinosaur in my front yard. It was bright green, taller than my mailbox, and wearing a faded red rain hat. I had never seen it before. The second thing I saw was a silver minivan in my driveway. The third was a paper taped inside my front window. It said, "Please do not ring, children sleeping." I stood there in uniform with my duffel bag at my feet and tried my door code, and the keypad flashed red. Wrong code. Then a little boy pressed his face to the glass. He shouted, "Grandma, the army lady is here." I was not in the army, it was my house. And the woman who opened my door was my mother, wearing my blue robe. She looked at my uniform, my bag, and the cab pulling away behind me. Then she sighed. "You weren't supposed to be back until next week." Behind her, my brother Brent walked through my living room carrying a bowl of cereal. My framed photographs were gone. His family pictures covered the mantel. My mother stepped onto the porch and pulled the door nearly shut behind her. "Don't make this hard," she whispered. "Brent and Jenna live here now. You can stay with us while you figure out somewhere else." She had a yellow folder tucked under her arm, a white label on the front read, "House Transfer." I had crossed an ocean to get home, and my family had used that time to move me out of my own life. What they did not know was that my front door kept a record of every code, every entry, and every lie. Before I tell you how my mother tried to make that theft sound like love, tell me where you are listening from. And if you have ever come home to find that family had rewritten your place in it, you will understand why I did not raise my voice on that porch. My name is Erin Hale. I was 36 years old, an Air Force logistics officer, and the legal owner of a 3-bedroom ranch house in Colorado Springs. I bought it 6 years before that morning. It was not grand. The siding needed paint, the kitchen had old oak cabinets, and one bathroom tile was always colder than the others. I loved every inch. The house sat on a quiet street near Palmer Park. In spring, wind pushed pink petals from my neighbor's crabapple tree across my driveway. In winter, snow gathered in the shallow dip by the garage. I knew which stair creaked, which window stuck, and how long the furnace took to stop rattling. It was the first place that had ever been only mine. That mattered because very little in my family had ever been only mine. My brother was 3 years younger and had needed rescuing for as long as I could remember. He needed rides after missed buses. He needed extensions after late assignments, and he needed money after bad choices. My mother called it helping him get his feet under him. When I needed something, she called it building character. If I forgot a lunch, I went hungry. If Brent forgot his, Mom drove it to school. If I wanted a class trip, I earned half the cost. If Brent wanted a new baseball glove, Dad was at the sporting goods store before dinner. My father, Paul, was not cruel. He was tired and conflict-averse. He worked maintenance at a hospital and came home smelling faintly of bleach and machine oil. When Mom made a decision, he usually rubbed his forehead and said, "Let's keep the peace." Peace always meant giving her what she wanted. I learned to be useful. Useful girls caused less trouble. I cleaned without being asked, kept receipts, and filled out forms for everyone. At 16, I helped Dad dispute a medical bill. At 19, I fixed Mom's tax return after she entered the same income twice. At 22, I drove through a snowstorm because Brent had locked his keys in his car. No one in my family called me the favorite. They called me dependable. It sounded like praise until I realized dependable people were expected to absorb the cost of everyone else's emergencies. I joined the Air Force after college. My mother cried at the airport and told strangers she had raised me to serve. She did not mention that she had spent the previous month warning me that military life would make me hard. Brent told everyone I joined because I liked rules, and the truth was simpler. I wanted a life where responsibility had limits. The military did not make life easy, and it did make expectations clear. An order had a source. A key had a custodian, a vehicle had a log. If property moved, someone signed for it. That structure felt almost tender to me. The house on Larkspur Lane came on the market in late February, and the listing photos were terrible. One showed a laundry basket in the hallway. Another was mostly the agent's thumb, but I saw the wide front window, the fenced yard, and a narrow room that could become an office. Mom came to the inspection, and she opened cabinets and criticized the grout. Dad checked the water heater. Brent walked through once, looked at the backyard, and said, "Man, this would be perfect for kids." I was not married, and I did not have children. At the time, I thought his comment was harmless. I signed the closing papers on a windy Thursday. The seller handed me 2 brass keys on a plain metal ring. One key had a tiny square tag stamped with the letter A. I held it so tightly that the edge marked my palm. Mom wanted a photograph. She made me stand in front of the door with the key raised beside my face. In the picture, my hair is blowing across my mouth, and I am laughing. Dad framed it for my birthday. That night, after they left, I sat on the bare living room floor. The house made unfamiliar sounds around me. Pipes clicked. Wind touched the vents, and I put the brass key beside my knee and cried for reasons I could not explain. I had spent years learning how not to need anything. The house was the first thing I allowed myself to want. Over the next 6 years, I made it mine slowly, and I painted the front door deep blue. I replaced the carpet with oak flooring. I planted a peach tree near the back fence, even though the garden center clerk warned me that late frost might kill the blossoms. It survived. So did I. Dad built a bench for the entryway, and it was simple pine, stained dark with a shelf for boots. On the underside, he wrote, "For Erin's first real home." I found the message when I turned the bench over to add felt pads, and I never told him I had seen it. After a while, I installed an electronic lock. The old brass key still worked, but the keypad let me create separate codes. I gave Mom a temporary code for emergencies. Dad had another. Every use appeared in an app with a date and time. Mom hated that feature. "So now my own daughter tracks me." "It tracks the lock," I said. "Same thing." I laughed then, and I thought she was joking. The year before my deployment, Brent's life began to slide sideways. He had left a steady warehouse job to start a custom cabinet business with a friend. The friend knew woodworking. Brent knew how to talk people into paying deposits. For a few months, the business looked promising, and then orders ran late. A supplier sued over unpaid invoices. Brent's partner left, and the company closed with debts Brent described as unfair. He and Jenna were renting a townhouse across town. Jenna worked part-time at a dental office and managed most of the bills. They had 2 children, Owen and Lily. Owen was 6. Lily had just turned 4. I loved those kids, and they were loud, curious, and completely innocent of the financial weather around them. Owen collected toy dinosaurs. Lily believed every woman in uniform could fly a jet. Brent started calling me late at night, and he never asked directly for money. He described a problem and waited for me to solve it, and the transmission was failing. The business card had a balance. Owen needed dental work. I helped twice, first with the transmission, then with part of the dental bill. The third time I said no, Mom called within an hour. "Your brother is trying to rebuild. So am I every month. You have a stable career. I also have a mortgage." She lowered her voice. "You don't have children, Erin. Your expenses are not the same." That sentence stayed with me. In my family, an adult woman without children was treated like an open account. Her time was extra. Her rooms were empty, and her money had no purpose until someone else needed it. Then my deployment orders arrived. I would be gone for 10 months with a logistics unit supporting operations overseas. It was not my first deployment, but it would be my longest absence from the house. I prepared the way I always did, and I updated insurance. I paused deliveries. I arranged lawn care. I stored important documents in a locked fire safe bolted inside my office closet. Mom offered to manage everything, and I thanked her and gave her a written property care authorization. It allowed her to let in approved contractors, respond to emergencies, and collect mail if the forwarding failed. It did not let her lend, lease, occupy, or transfer the house. She skimmed the first page at my kitchen table. "You know I would never do anything without asking." "I know," I said. That was the last easy lie I believed. 2 weeks before I left, I walked Mom through the house. I showed her the shutoff valve, the breaker panel, and the folder with contractor numbers. Dad stood near the garage door and nodded at each instruction. The night before my flight, my family came for dinner. Mom brought pot roast. Dad tightened a loose cabinet hinge. Jenna washed dishes beside me while Brent showed Owen videos on his phone. Jenna looked tired, and she had the careful face of someone doing math in her head. "Our landlord may sell the townhouse," she said quietly. "Nothing is final. I am sorry, that is stressful. We will figure it out." Mom was close enough to hear. Family always figures it out. The next morning, Dad drove me to the airport. Mom hugged me hard and pressed a packet of tissues into my hand. Brent sent a thumbs-up emoji. Jenna texted, "Come home safe." I boarded with the brass key in the small zippered pocket of my carry-on. The electronic lock could be opened by my code from anywhere only if someone stood at the door. The key was not useful overseas. I carried it anyway. In the 3rd month, I noticed the lock app showing entries after midnight, and the code belonged to Mom. One entry was at 12:47, another was at 1:23. I messaged her, and she replied the next day. "Your father thought he smelled gas. Twice. He worries." Dad had never worried about anything after 9 in the evening unless Mom told him to. A week later, my neighbor Ruth sent a photograph of the peach tree. Ruth was a retired middle school principal with silver hair and a voice that could stop a moving truck. She had promised to watch the yard, not the people. The picture showed 3 small peaches and Owen's green dinosaur near the fence. I zoomed in. "Why is Owen's toy at my house?" Ruth replied. "Your family has been visiting." "How often?" The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. "You should ask your mother." I called Mom, and she sounded offended before I finished the question. "Brent takes the kids over sometimes. They miss you. They can miss me at your house. Your yard is fenced. Ours is not." "Why are they there at night?" "They aren't." I opened the lock log. Mom's code had been used 14 times that week. I read the dates aloud. She exhaled slowly. "I gave Brent the code once because Lily needed a bathroom. Once does not create 14 entries." "You are counting your family like intruders." "I am counting entries to my house." Her voice hardened. "This is exactly what I meant when I said the military was making you rigid." I changed Mom's code that night. The next morning, the app showed the brass key had opened the lock. The system could not identify who used it. It only recorded a manual entry. I called Dad. He did not answer. I called Brent. He sounded breathless. Children shouted behind him. "Are you at my house?" "No." I heard the hollow slam of my kitchen pantry door. It had a loose hinge and made a sound like a book dropping. "Brent." He lowered his voice. "Mom said it was okay for us to use the yard." "Why are you inside?" Lily spilled juice. "Leave. Come on, Erin. Leave my house." He muttered something away from the phone. Then he said, "We are leaving." The lock recorded the door closing 6 minutes later. I sent a message to the family group. "No one has permission to enter or use my house except for a documented emergency or an approved repair. Do not share keys or codes." Mom replied first. "Understood." Dad added a check mark. Jenna wrote, "I am sorry, I thought you knew." Brent did not answer. For 3 weeks, the lock stayed quiet and the utility use dropped. I convinced myself the boundary had worked. Then a box from a furniture company appeared in a photograph Ruth sent. It sat on my porch beside a rolled rug. The label was too blurry to read. I called Ruth. "What is happening over there?" She was silent for a beat. "A truck came yesterday." "What kind of truck?" "Moving." The room around me narrowed, and I could hear an air conditioner grinding above my desk. "Who moved in?" I assumed you approved it. Who? Your brother's family. I did not remember standing. One moment I was seated, the next I was pacing beside a metal cabinet. When? Yesterday morning, your parents were there. I opened the lock app, and there had been no entries because the lock was offline. The last status update was 4 days earlier. I called Mom, no answer. Dad, no answer. Brent answered on the 5th ring. Tell me you did not move into my house. He went quiet. Tell me. Mom said you agreed. I did not. She showed me the property paper. The property care authorization, and my stomach turned cold. That paper lets her call a plumber. It does not let her move you in. She said it was temporary. Then leave today. Where are we supposed to go? Where were you supposed to go before you stole my house? His voice rose. We did not steal anything. The place was empty. It was not empty. I live there. You are on another continent. I am deployed. Same difference. It was not the same difference, not even close. Jenna took the phone, and she sounded like she had been crying. Erin, we were told you offered. Your mom said you knew our lease ended. I knew your landlord might sell. I never offered my home. She had paperwork. Did it have my signature agreeing to this? Another silence. No, Jenna said. Then you knew something was wrong. Brent took the phone back. We cannot move twice in 1 week. You should not have moved the first time. Mom called while I was still speaking, and I switched over. She did not apologize. You frightened Jenna. You moved 4 people into my house. They had nowhere to go. They had notice from their landlord. Not enough notice. They had more than 2 months. You would know that if you had children. There it was again, and the sentence that turned every boundary into selfishness. I forced my voice to stay level. They need to leave. No. The word was soft. That made it worse. Excuse me? I said no. Brent's family needs stability. Your house is sitting unused while taxpayers pay for your lodging. My lodging overseas is not a replacement for my home. You have options. So does he. He has children, and I have a deed. Mom made a sound of disgust. A deed is paper. Family is real. I looked at the steel wall of my office, and I thought of my brass key. That paper is real enough to decide who lives there. She ended the call. I went to my commander and explained that I had an unauthorized occupancy problem at home. He did not laugh or tell me to solve family issues off duty. He gave me the number for legal assistance and told me to take an hour. The military attorney listened carefully. She explained that property law depended on the state and that I needed a local civilian attorney. She also told me not to change locks, remove belongings, shut off utilities, or make threats from overseas. They entered without permission, I said. I believe you, but if they have lived there and receive mail there, the safest path is formal. Safe paths are rarely satisfying, and they are still paths. I called 3 attorneys in Colorado Springs, and the first had no openings. The second represented landlords but would not take a case involving relatives. The third was a woman named Maya Grant. Maya asked short questions. Who owned the home? Me. Was there a lease? No. Did anyone pay rent? No. How long had they occupied it? 2 days, as far as I knew. Did I have written proof that permission was denied? Yes. Preserve everything, she said. Send a written demand that they leave. Do not debate the whole family history in the message. I sent one email to Brent, Jenna, Mom, and Dad. It said they did not have permission to occupy my property. It said the care authorization did not permit residence. It asked Brent and Jenna to move out within 1 week and contact Maya about returning possession. Mom replied with 4 paragraphs, and she called the arrangement humane, temporary, and necessary. She accused me of choosing an empty building over children. Brent replied with 1 line, "We need more time." Jenna did not reply. I asked Mom where my furniture had gone. It is safe. Where? Stored. At whose storage unit? Ours. Send me the address and contract. Why would you need that overseas? Because it is my property. She sent the address 2 days later, and the unit was in her name. The first month had been paid with my emergency credit card. That card was for repairs to my house. I froze it immediately. Mom called within minutes. The payment failed. You used my card to remove my belongings. We protected them. You billed me for being displaced. You are not displaced. You are deployed. Her ability to polish a cruel fact until it sounded reasonable was almost a talent. I asked for an inventory. She refused. I asked for photographs. She sent 6, and my sofa stood on its side. Boxes were stacked to the ceiling. Dad's entry bench was upside down beneath a mattress. The fire safe was missing. I called her. Where is the safe from my office closet? We did not touch a safe. It was bolted down. Then perhaps it is still there. Send me a photograph of the closet. She did not. I called Brent, and he claimed the closet had been empty when they moved in. Then Owen shouted, "Dad, the black box is heavy." Brent covered the phone. What black box? A toolbox. I knew the difference between a child's lie and an adult's. Put the safe back in the closet. It is in the garage. You told me you had not seen it. I forgot. You unbolted it. Mom wanted the office cleared. My office had become Owen's bedroom, and my desk was in storage. My locked safe was in the garage because they wanted space for a dinosaur comforter. I closed my eyes. Inside the safe were my closing documents, insurance papers, and the framed photograph of me holding the brass key. The originals were protected by the lock, copies existed elsewhere. Nothing inside gave Mom ownership, but she had moved the object that proved this had always been my home. Do not open it, I said. We cannot. We do not have the combination. Do not move it again. After the call, I documented the conversation and sent it to Maya. She replied, "This is why we preserve facts." I began a folder of my own, logs, utility bills, photographs, emails, and the property care authorization with the restriction highlighted. The credit card charge for storage, every piece had a date and a source. I did not call it a case, and I called it my return plan. By the 5th month, Brent had stopped pretending the move was temporary. He changed his mailing address with the bank. Jenna enrolled Owen in the neighborhood school. A package arrived each week. I knew because Ruth photographed the labels from the sidewalk, and she never stepped onto the property. I was a principal for 32 years, she told me. I know the difference between watching and trespassing. She also noticed something I had missed, and my mother's car was there nearly every weekday. The temporary code had been disabled, but she used the brass key. I had given Mom one original spare years earlier. Dad used a code. My own tagged key was overseas with me. 2 physical keys existed. At least, that was what I believed. Ruth watched Mom hand a new silver key to Jenna beside the mailbox. Jenna placed it on her ring. That meant someone had copied mine. I asked Dad directly, "Did you make copies of my house key?" He sighed. "Your mother thought they should each have one." "How many?" "I do not know." "Did you go to the hardware store?" "Erin, I am at work." "How many keys, Dad?" A cart rattled past him, and he waited until the sound faded. 3 copies plus the 2 originals. 5 keys could now open my front door. Why? The kids needed access. The kids do not own the house. Please do not talk to me like I am one of your airmen. Then stop acting like you had an order you could not question. He went silent. I regretted the sharpness, and I did not regret the truth. Dad said Mom believed I would calm down. He said she did not want Brent's family moving again before the school year. He said everyone expected me to renew my overseas assignment. I never said that. Your mother said you might. I said I might apply for a stateside position after I return. That is not how she understood it. That is not how she told it. He rubbed his forehead, and I could picture the motion. I am trying to keep this family together. No, you are helping her decide which part of the family can be removed. He ended the call gently. We will talk when you get home. That became their answer to everything. When you get home, as if time would convert trespassing into tradition. Maya sent another formal letter. Brent acknowledged receipt but asked to remain until my deployment ended. I refused in writing. He stayed. I considered starting the full court process from overseas. Maya explained the practical steps. It could be done, but it would require affidavits, service, and hearings. A contested case might continue close to my return. I authorized her to prepare, then hesitated before filing, and I wanted the children housed. I wanted my own house back, and those wants should not have been enemies. Jenna finally emailed me, and she wrote after midnight. I need you to know Mom told us you offered the house for the whole school year. She said you were considering another assignment and that you did not want it empty. Brent believed her. I wanted to call you, but he said it would insult you after you were helping us. I read it twice. Why did you stay after I told you she lied? I replied. Her answer came the next morning. Because by then we had nowhere prepared, and because it was easier to believe you would forgive us. That sentence hurt more than Brent's anger, and it was honest. They had counted on forgiveness before asking permission. I asked Jenna to send every message from Mom about the house, and she sent screenshots. The first was dated 6 weeks before their move. Mom wrote, "Erin understands that a home should be used by family." I had never said that. The next said, "I have authority while she is gone." The care letter gave her authority to admit contractors. Then came the message that showed the plan. Do not bother Erin with details. Once the children are settled, she will not make them leave. She cares too much about looking heartless. I stared at those words for a long time. Mom had not misunderstood me, and she had calculated me. The next screenshot showed Brent asking about rent. Mom replied, "Save your money. Erin has steady income and no dependents." Jenna asked whether they should sign anything. Mom wrote, "Paperwork only creates problems inside a family." That was the same woman who had arrived at my door with a folder labeled house transfer. I stopped calling Mom, and she sent cheerful updates anyway. Owen made the honor roll. Lily learned to ride without training wheels. Your peach tree finally produced enough for a pie. That last message made me sit down. I had planted the tree, and I had watered it through dry summers. The first useful harvest happened while someone else treated my yard as theirs. Mom sent a picture of a pie on my kitchen counter, and my blue mixing bowl sat beside it. My return date was set for a Monday in early October. I told no one except Maya and Ruth. My unit was released 10 days earlier than expected because the replacement team arrived ahead of schedule. That gave me a choice. I could warn my family and let them prepare a clean version of the house, or I could come home to the truth. I chose the truth. Maya booked me a hotel for the first 3 nights and arranged a meeting the morning after I landed. She reminded me not to force entry if the situation felt unsafe, and I almost laughed. I had crossed loading yards during alarms, yet the thought of my mother standing inside my house made my hands sweat. Ruth offered to pick me up, and I declined because I wanted a quiet ride. I landed after dawn, collected my duffel, and took a cab from the airport. The city looked painfully familiar. Mountains rose blue beyond the highway. The light had that sharp Colorado clarity that makes every edge visible. I saw the green dinosaur before the cab stopped, then the minivan, then the note in the window. My keypad code failed because Brent had replaced the electronic lock with a cheaper model. The blue door was scratched around the new hardware. Owen saw me through the glass and called me the army lady. Mom opened the door in my robe. Everything in the cold opening happened in less than 2 minutes. It took me longer to understand the robe than the house. It was cotton, dark blue, with a torn belt loop, and I kept it on the back of my bathroom door. Mom must have found it before the rest of my clothing went to storage. She folded her arms. "We need to discuss this calmly." I looked past her. Brent stood in my living room with cereal. Lily watched from the hallway. Jenna appeared behind him, pale and still. My brown leather chair was gone. A gray sectional filled the room. Toys covered the rug, and my entry bench sat by the door, but the shelf held 4 pairs of children's shoes. Dad's words were still on the underside, for Erin's first real home. "Where is my lock?" I asked. Mom blinked. The old one malfunctioned. Where is it? In the garage, probably. Who authorized the replacement? It was necessary. Who authorized it? Brent set down the bowl. The batteries kept dying. They were rechargeable. He looked at Mom. I turned back to her. You knew I was coming home next week. That is why we prepared the folder. She lifted the yellow folder as if it were evidence of kindness. What is in it? A solution. I already have a solution. They leave. Owen began to cry. Jenna guided both children toward the back of the house. Mom leaned closer. You see what you are doing? I walked onto my own porch. You arrived without warning. I do not need an appointment to return home. Brent stepped between us. He had gained weight and grown a short beard. He looked older than when I left, but the expression was the same one he wore after every crisis. Injured first, responsible later. We have been living here for months, he said, against my written objection. The kids are in school. I did not enroll them. Jenna works nearby now. I did not arrange that. You cannot expect us to vanish because your schedule changed. My schedule did not give you the house. Mom tapped the yellow folder against her palm. No one is asking you to give it away for nothing. I looked at the label again. House transfer. What are you asking? Come to dinner Sunday. We will discuss the fair arrangement. I am discussing it now. She lowered her voice. Not in front of the children. You moved the children into the argument. Her face tightened. You have always been dramatic when you are tired. I picked up my duffel. The cab was gone. Ruth stood across the street beside her mailbox, watching. I turned to Brent. Do not move another item. Do not open my safe. Do not copy another key. Maya Grant will contact you today. He laughed without humor. You brought a lawyer against your own brother. No, you brought my lawyer to my front door. I walked across the street. Ruth opened her arms, then stopped. Hug or no hug? Hug. She held me while I kept my eyes on the blue door. I am sorry, she said. So am I. Your mother told everyone you volunteered the house. Of course she did. Ruth carried my bag into her kitchen and made coffee, and her home smelled like cinnamon and furniture polish. Through the side window, I could see my roof. She had printed a folder for me. It contained dates of moving trucks, photographs from the public street, and notes about vehicles. I did not want to be a spy, she said. You were a witness. That sounds less nosy. It is also true. One photograph showed Mom directing movers. Another showed Dad carrying my desk drawers. A third showed Brent replacing the lock. Ruth pointed to the date. This was after your written message telling them to leave. The photograph captured Brent kneeling by my blue door with a drill. Mom stood behind him holding the new lock package. Not a malfunction, a decision. I sent the image to Maya. She replied, "Come to my office after you sleep." I did not sleep. At the hotel, I opened the yellow folder Mom had slipped into my duffel while Ruth and I were talking. I had not seen her cross the street. The folder was there when I unzipped the bag. Inside was a quitclaim deed downloaded from the internet. My name appeared as the person giving up the property. Brent's name appeared as the new owner. The transfer amount was $1. A yellow note marked the signature line. Mom had written, "Family first." There was also a typed page titled Understanding. It said I would continue paying the mortgage for 1 year while Brent repaired his credit. After that, he would seek financing. He was supposed to become the owner for $1 while I kept the debt. The final page listed reasons the arrangement was fair. I had military housing options. I was single. I had no children. Brent had already established residency. Moving would disrupt school. The house had gained value. Family property should stay in the family. The house was already in the family, and it belonged to me. At the bottom, Mom had typed a line in bold. Erin retains the right to visit with reasonable notice. I sat on the hotel carpet and laughed once, and it came out like a cough. They wanted me to request permission to visit my own home. I photographed every page, and then I placed the folder on the desk beside my brass key. The old key might not fit the new lock, and it still meant more than all the paper Mom had assembled. At Maya's office, I learned the difference between being right and getting possession back safely. "The deed is yours," she said. "The transfer paper is nothing unless you sign and it is properly handled. Do not sign anything." I was not tempted. "I did not think you were." She reviewed the messages, the authorization, and the photographs. Then she explained that Brent and Jenna had occupied the home long enough that removing them required process. Their original entry could be unauthorized, while their current occupancy still created practical legal protections. "That feels backward." "It feels slow," she said. "Slow is not the same as lost." She had already prepared a formal notice, and it required them to leave by a stated date. If they refused, she would file the next step in court. "Can I enter my house?" "You are the owner, but I recommend a scheduled inspection with notice. Avoid a confrontation and do not remove their belongings." "What about my belongings?" "We document them." "What about my mother's code?" "Your mother does not live there. You can revoke her access." But because the hardware changed, first document every key and request return of copies. I took notes. Logistics calmed me. Dates, custody, access, proof. Maya looked at me over her glasses. "Your mother is using the children to make you feel that legal ownership is emotional cruelty." "Yes. Do not argue about who needs the house more. That is not the issue." I knew that. I still needed to hear it. We scheduled the inspection for Friday afternoon. Brent confirmed. Jenna sent a separate message asking whether the children should be away. "Yes," I wrote. Mom replied for them. "The children will not be removed from their home to make you comfortable." I sent one sentence. "This is not their home." Then I turned off notifications. Friday came bright and cold. Maya did not attend, but she arranged for a licensed property manager named Lewis to document the condition. Ruth joined me as a witness. Mom's car was in the driveway. I had told her not to attend. She opened the door before I knocked, and she wore her own clothes this time. "Brent asked me to be here." Brent stood behind her, Jenna was at work, and the children were at school despite Mom's message. Lewis introduced himself and asked permission to begin photographs. Brent shrugged. Mom demanded his credentials. The closet door was open. 4 empty bolt holes marked the floor where my safe had stood. "Garage," Brent said before I asked. We found it behind paint cans, and the metal case was dented along one corner but closed. I knelt and entered the combination, and the lock opened. My closing papers were inside, so was the photograph of me holding the key. The glass in the frame was cracked. Mom looked over my shoulder. "Nothing was taken. That is not the standard." "What standard?" "The standard where you do not unbolt my safe." She rolled her eyes. "It was in the way." Lewis documented the cold tile, the windows, the appliances, and the lock. He removed the interior cover to photograph the serial number. The old electronic lock was not in the garage. Brent said he had thrown it away. Mom said Dad had it. Both statements arrived within the same breath. I looked at them. "Which is true?" Mom answered first. "Your father may have saved it after Brent planned to discard it. Where is it now?" "Probably our basement." The device held local entry records even when offline, and that explained why it disappeared. I called Dad from the hallway, and he answered. "Do you have my old lock?" A long pause. "Yes." "Do not give it to Mom. Bring it to Ruth's house tonight." Mom stared at me. Dad said, "All right." It was the first time he had chosen my instruction over hers, and it was small, and I felt it. Before I left, I handed Brent the formal notice. He read the first paragraph and threw it onto the folding table. "You are really doing this. You were told to leave months ago. Mom said you would not follow through. Mom does not own my follow-through." He glanced toward the office. "Owen loves that room. I loved it too. He is a child, and I am not a building." Mom stepped forward. "Sunday dinner, we settle this as a family. The deadline is in the notice. You will come." I put on my blue robe over my arm like a folded flag. "I will come. but not to negotiate my ownership. That night, Dad brought the old lock to Ruth's porch in a grocery bag. He looked smaller than I remembered. Then he said, "She made the copies at Miller's Hardware. 3, like I told you, I have 1. Brent and Jenna each have 1. She kept your original spare. Bring yours Sunday." He looked toward my house across the street. "What happens then?" "They return the keys, they leave by the deadline. Mom loses access permanently. That will feel like punishment to her. It will be a consequence." Dad rubbed his forehead. "Same thing in her mind. I am done living inside her mind." He left without asking for a hug. Inside Ruth's kitchen, I connected the old lock to power, and the app restored its local history. The log showed Mom's code until I disabled it, and then it showed manual key entries. Dozens of them. The last digital record before the lock went offline showed an installer mode opened with Mom's code. She had not simply watched Brent replace the lock. She had used her authorized access to help disable the system. I exported the log. 47 entries belonged to Mom before the hardware was removed. The first unexplained overnight entry happened 6 weeks before Brent moved in. She had been preparing the house. Ruth looked at the list. What did she do for 6 weeks? I thought of the storage unit, the new curtains, and the messages to Jenna. She made my home look available. The Sunday dinner was no longer a family discussion. It was where I would let her finish explaining the plan she thought I was too soft to refuse. Sunday dinner was held in my house. Mom chose the location without asking me. She said it would keep the children calm. I agreed because the house was the point, and because I wanted every person present to see who acted like the owner. I arrived with Ruth 10 minutes early. Lewis had provided a condition report. Maya had prepared a move-out agreement as an option, not a threat. My closing papers were in a slim black folder. The old lock log sat behind them. The brass key was in my pocket. Dad opened the door, and his copied key was still on his ring. Mom still had my original spare. The dining room looked staged. My folding table was covered with a white cloth. Mom had cooked roast chicken and arranged flowers in my blue mixing bowl. She pointed to a chair. "Sit down before the food gets cold." "I did not come for dinner." "You have to eat." "No." Brent sat at one end of the table. Jenna sat beside him, and the children were with her sister for the evening. That was the first sensible choice anyone had made. The yellow transfer folder waited at my place. Mom had added more sticky notes. She began with a speech about stability. Brent had lost his business through no fault of his own. Rentals were expensive. Owen had friends nearby. Lily loved the yard. Jenna's job was close. Every statement might have been true, none gave them my deed. Mom said my military career provided housing wherever I went. She said I could rent the house to Brent for a fair amount until he qualified for financing. "What amount?" I asked. She glanced at him. "We thought $1 a month would keep it official." Ruth made a small sound beside me. Mom continued, and she said I would keep paying the mortgage because the loan was in my name. Brent would cover utilities when he could. Repairs would count as equity. "So he becomes an owner by living here while I pay? Do not twist it." I am repeating it. Brent leaned forward. "I can refinance later." When my credit improves." "What is the plan for that?" He spread his hands. "I need stability first." "You have had 8 months without rent. How much did you save?" He looked at Mom. I waited. Jenna answered. "About $1,400. Their former rent had been nearly $2,000 a month. 8 months should have created room. It had not. "Where did the rest go?" I asked. Brent's jaw tightened. "Life costs money. So does this house." Mom pushed the yellow folder toward me. "The details can be adjusted. The principle is what matters. The principle is that you do not own my home." Her face changed. The patient smile disappeared. A house this size should not sit half empty for one person. It did not sit empty. I lived here. You left. I deployed. You chose a career that moves you. I also chose to buy a house. She pressed both hands to the table. You have a uniform and a housing allowance. Brent has children. A house should go to the person who needs it. There it was, the cleanest version of her belief. I took the yellow folder and opened it. Did you write this transfer? I prepared it. Did you tell Brent I offered the house? I told him you would understand. Did you tell Jenna you had authority? I had a signed paper. I placed the property care authorization on the table, and the restriction was highlighted. Dad read it aloud quietly. No authority to lend, lease, occupy, convey, or transfer the property. Mom turned on him. You know what she intended. No, I said. You know what you intended. I laid out Jenna's screenshots, Mom's own words faced upward. Do not bother Erin with details. Once the children are settled, she will not make them leave. She cares too much about looking heartless. Brent stared at the messages as if he had never seen them together. Jenna had. Mom recovered quickly. Those were private conversations taken out of context. The context was my house. I was trying to prevent panic. You created the move before you told me there was a problem. Brent looked at her. You said she offered before our lease ended. Mom ignored him. I placed the old lock log beside the messages. You entered 47 times before you removed the lock. The first overnight entry was 6 weeks before they moved. I was checking the property. At 1 a.m, there were things to prepare. Yes, my removal. Her eyes flashed. You were not removed, your belongings were protected. You unbolted my safe, you moved my furniture, you copied 4 keys, you replaced my lock after I told you in writing that no one had permission to live here. The children needed bedrooms. You decided my office was available because I was serving somewhere else. Mom's voice rose. Stop using the deployment like a shield. Plenty of people leave home for work. I felt the room go still. I am not using it as a shield. Then stop acting like we betrayed the country. You betrayed me, she laughed once. By helping your brother, I stood. No, you did not keep my home safe. You gave it away while I was serving. No one moved. I had carried that sentence across months of heat, sleepless shifts, and careful phone calls. It sounded quieter aloud than it had in my head. That made it stronger. Mom looked toward Dad. Say something. He stared at the table. She is right about the paper. Mom pushed back her chair. Unbelievable. I did not let the moment shift to their marriage. I placed the move-out agreement in front of Brent and Jenna. This is the choice. You leave by the date in the formal notice. You return every key. You remove your belongings and leave mine. In exchange, I will not seek payment for the months you occupied the house. Brent scanned the page. And if we do not sign? Maya files the next step. The deadline does not disappear. You would put an eviction on our record. I am offering you a way to avoid a contested case. Mom snatched the paper. Do not sign this. Jenna took it back. For the first time that evening, she looked directly at me. Can we have until the end of the month? The notice gives you that. And you will not ask for rent if the house is returned on time and without more damage. Brent whispered, we do not have a deposit. I believed him, and I also remembered the $1,400. You have savings, you both have income. Dad told me your old landlord returned most of your deposit. Mom looked at Dad again. Another secret had failed. Jenna closed her eyes. We can take the townhouse on Ridgeway. Brent turned to her. That place has 2 bedrooms. The kids can share for a while. My son should not have to lose his room because Erin wants to prove a point. I leaned toward him. Your son has a room because you took mine. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Jenna signed first. The scratch of her pen was the loudest sound in the room. She passed it to Brent. He did not sign. Mom whispered, think about your children. Jenna said, I am. Brent looked at the yellow folder, then at the green paint visible down the hall. Finally, he signed. I signed beneath them. The house was not yet empty, and the conflict was not magically over. But the exit now had a date they had chosen in writing. Mom reached for the signed agreement, and I moved it into my black folder. We are not finished, she said. We are. You still have to sign the transfer refusal. I almost asked what that meant. Then I understood, and she wanted a piece of paper proving that I had rejected the family. Something she could show people. I do not need to refuse property I already own. You cannot walk in here after months away and destroy everyone's stability. I walked into my house. It has been their home. Because you gambled that I would be ashamed to take it back. Her face went pale. I reached for my phone and opened the new locks account. During the inspection, Lewis had used the interior reset button while Brent watched and restored my owner access. Brent and Jenna kept temporary resident codes through the move-out date. Mom's code still existed. I tapped her name. The screen asked whether I wanted to remove access, and I pressed yes. A soft chime came from the front door. Mom turned toward it. "Your code is gone," I said. "Every physical key must be returned tonight." She gripped the edge of the table. "I am your mother. You are not my property manager. What if there is an emergency? Then Brent calls emergency services. You do not enter." Dad removed a silver key from his pocket and set it beside my plate. "Mine is here." Jenna added hers. Brent dropped his key beside hers. Mom did not move. "You made 3 copies," I said. Dad returned his. Brent and Jenna returned theirs. "Where is the original spare?" She looked at the 3 keys. "I may have left it at home." Ruth spoke for the first time. "You used it to enter before we arrived. I watched you." Mom's head snapped toward her. "This is family business." Ruth's voice stayed calm. "Then stop making your daughter need witnesses." Dad closed his eyes. Mom reached into her purse and placed the original brass spare on the table. I counted them. 4. The brass key with the square tag remained in my pocket. The original spare lay beside 3 silver copies. 5 keys had existed. All were now accounted for. I put the returned keys in a clear evidence envelope, and then I placed the tagged key on my own ring. Mom watched the movement. "That is it," she asked. "You choose a building over us?" "No, I am choosing the truth over the story you built inside it." She gathered her purse. "Do not call when you finally understand what family costs." I looked at the storage receipt charged to my card and the dented safe. The cracked frame, the mortgage statement. I understand exactly what this family costs. She left through the blue door. The keypad flashed red when she pressed her old code from the porch. That was the visible moment of change. Not shouting, not police lights, one red flash on a lock she no longer controlled. Dad followed her after a long pause. At the door, he turned back. "I will pay the storage bill," he said. "You both will," he nodded. "We both will." Then he left. Brent and Jenna remained at the table, and the roast chicken had gone cold. Jenna asked whether I wanted the blue mixing bowl. "I want everything that is mine left in the house," she nodded. Brent stared at his signature. "You could have helped us." "I did, for 8 months. You did not choose it. That is why it was not help." He looked away. I took my folders and robe. Ruth took the 4 returned keys. At the door, I paused beside the pine bench. Children's shoes filled the shelf. Dad's hidden message remained underneath. The house was still occupied. It was still mine. Over the next 3 weeks, Brent and Jenna packed. I did not supervise daily. Lewis completed 2 scheduled checks. Ruth watched the curb. Maya held the signed agreement. Dad paid the overdue storage balance from the joint account he shared with Mom. He also paid for a locksmith to rekey the physical cylinder after the move. Brent asked me for the new rental deposit 2 days before the deadline. I said no. He found the money. Jenna took extra shifts and they used their savings. Mom covered part of it after canceling a weekend trip. No one became homeless. That fact mattered. On the final morning, I waited across the street with Ruth while the moving truck pulled away. Brent carried the green dinosaur last. Owen hugged its neck from the back seat. I felt sad for him, and I did not confuse sadness with surrender. Jenna walked over and handed me the resident code card. "The place on Ridgeway is small," she said, "but it is ours to pay for. That is a start." She looked toward my house. "I should have called you before we moved." "Yes, I am sorry." It was not a perfect apology, and it did not erase 8 months. It was honest enough to stand on. Brent did not come over, and he raised one hand from the driver's seat. I did not raise mine. The truck left. I crossed the street carrying the brass key. The front door opened on the first turn. The house was dirty, dented, and quiet, and the office walls were still green. Stars glowed faintly on the ceiling. A pale square marked the floor where Owen's bed had stood. My furniture returned from storage that afternoon, and the sofa had a torn seam. The dining table had a deep scratch. Dad's bench survived. The framed closing photograph did not, and the cracked glass had cut the picture across my raised hand. I replaced the frame, but kept the photograph. I did not paint over the green immediately. For several weeks, I used that room exactly as it was. The color reminded me that a boundary can be violated without becoming permanently lost. Their townhouse did not ruin them. Paying their own rent changed them more than living in my house ever had. By spring, the peach tree bloomed again. A late frost came, just as the garden clerk had warned years before. I covered the branches with old sheets and left a porch light beneath them for warmth. Ruth helped me tie the corners. "You know," she said, "that tree survived being taken for granted. So did the owner," she smiled. "There she is." I replaced the electronic lock with a new model, one owner code. One temporary contractor code kept disabled until needed, no family codes. The app showed every entry. Most days there was only mine. That did not make the house empty. It made it peaceful. I hung the brass key with the square tag on a small hook beside the door, not because I needed it every day, but because I wanted to see it when I came home. A house is not abandoned because its owner is serving far away. A woman is not available because she has no children. And love does not become permission simply because the person crossing the line calls herself family. My mother thought I would protect her plan from consequences because children were already sleeping in my rooms. She was right about one thing. I cared about those children. That was why I gave their parents time to leave with dignity. I just stopped paying for that dignity with my home. If this story reminded you of a boundary, someone expected you to surrender. Share what helped you hold it. Sometimes the first lock we need to change is the belief that saying no makes us cruel.